Hello, I am Michael Smith, one of the founding partners of Decision Grid and the facilitator of this short workshop on making your future really happen. I think you're going to be impressed with the magic secrets we share with you today that you and your team can actually use. Let me start by asking you a question. Ever driven in the fog? And if you have, how fast do you go? And if you go fast, how do you feel? If you're like me, driving fast while not being sure of what lurking obstacle may suddenly appear out of the mist makes me very uptight. So I drive pretty slowly, and the tension in my body is reflective of the fear that I feel. Well then, how do you drive on a clear day on an open road? How fast do you go, and then how do you feel? If you're like me, on an open road, you can really feel good and calm about where you're going because you can see so far ahead. You can see obstacles that are coming at you. You can see things that you need to be aware of. Well, today we are going to explore a way to clear away the fog and give you a tool to help you and your team feel much more comfortable with their future just because they have a pretty good idea of what's ahead. So here are my goals for today's session. The first is to share the secret to making your future really happen. And the second is to give you a dynamic budgeting tool you can use to help you and your organization grow your passion. But first, let me give you a disclaimer. The fact is, there is no secret. Budgeting is just simply hard work. It takes discipline, it takes focus, but the benefits I want to share with you are well worth the time and the energy that it takes to make it happen. It's sort of like the two roads that diverged in a wood, and you chose to take the road less traveled. My guess is that most organizations do not budget. They don't have the discipline of making sure that what they want to do or what they really want actually happens. And that's really what a budget does. It frames the future for you. And to do that, you have to take the road less traveled. You have to build a budget, envision your future, and then stick to making it happen, because the view from the top really is extraordinary. This is a tool, and one of the most significant tools that you can use to make your future really happen. I told you before that it takes discipline, and discipline is simply the bridge between what we have and what we want. Discipline comes from the Latin word for student, which is someone who is invested in learning. And let's disabuse the concept of discipline for our use by defining discipline as a set of strategic rules that, when followed, lead to a predetermined end. For you, that predetermined end is the future you have envisioned for your organization. What is a budget? Well, a budget, just like discipline, is a set of strategic financial rules that, when followed, lead to a predetermined end. Think of a budget as a fence or guardrail to prevent your organization from falling off the path to success, which is your predetermined end, your future of choice. Now the question is, and why you came here, is how do I build a budget? Well, I want to give you your path to success in 4 reasonably easy steps. And we're going to start at the 50,000 foot view and then finally get down into the weeds. The first thing you have to do is to get a vision. Notice I say get a vision, not necessarily build one. In any group of 10 people, my experience is that there is probably only one person who has the gift and temperament to be a prophet, calling us to a vision of what could be. If you are the leader of any kind of organization, but especially a 501c3 or a church, you can and most likely should build this vision or get this vision with your key players, the movers and shakers of your organization. Remember, as Kevin Costner so famously said, if they build it, they own it, and if they own it, they are on board to make it happen. Well, Kevin Costner really didn't say that. I paraphrased a little bit. If you're going to get a vision, from whence should it come? Well, you can get a vision from a competitor, a hero of yours, a team, another team, or from your team. You can get it from a book. For those of you who are spiritual, the Bible's got all kinds of things that can inspire you and you can steal and make them work for you. You can get it from a website or any, if you're like me, you can get it from any combination of the above sources. If you want to build a vision, I have a handout that will help facilitate the process, and it's called Future Facts. And I believe I sent that to you, or you can pick that up either on the website or by emailing me, and I'd be glad to send you a e-copy of that. Step 2 is to set some SMART goals. SMART goals are, that's an acronym, S-M-A-R-T, are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and tied to a date. So when you aim your scarce and precious resources at a particular target, you can make that kind of thing happen. This is going to require some tedious and time-consuming work, and I will tell you now that it's unlikely that you are going to hit exactly what you're aiming at, but persevere. Telling the future is a shaky business at best, and tying income and expenses to what you want and believe might happen is bound to be wrong, but it will serve as a guide to getting you what you want. Without the path, without the compass, without a guide, you're bound to wander, and that's not good for morale. And contrary to popular beliefs, budgets can and should be adjusted for the problems and opportunities you encounter along the way. Just like this lady who's shooting at a particular target, if your target moves, then your aim should move also. In business, if something happens along the way, if you get a large account or you lose a large account, you have to dynamically change your budget so that you can hit the target that you're aiming at. Let no financial person tell you that something can't be done or money resources can't be spent because it's not in the budget. Your budget is not supposed to act as the head guard of your prison. Your budget is simply like a good fishing guide who switches bait, location, and presentation based on whatever the conditions dictate. So what I'm advocating is a dynamic budget. As a leader, your success is determined by how well you allocate scarce and precious resources for the highest and best use in pursuit of making your mission happen. Again, tattoo this particular saying on the inside of your eyelids. Your success as an organization is determined by how well you allocate the scarce and precious resources of your organization, and those include people. They're included on your budget, but it's the cost of people. It is their energy. It is their knowledge. It is the physical places that you maintain, that you've invested in. It might be the equipment that you have, but you have to allocate those for their highest and best use in pursuit of making your mission happen. And your financial statements reported against a budget is the essential feedback you need to determine if you're allocating those scarce and precious resources as well as you can. Step 3 is to be a student. Remember that the word discipline comes from the Latin word meaning student or learner. To build an effective and useful dynamic budget, you must be a good, disciplined learner. So, to be a problem-solving learner, use your own history. If you can, use your operating statement from last year and then simply increase all categories, expense and income, by some sense of what you think a increase of anticipated growth might be. That percentage, you just simply apply that and you raise or lower all of your income projections and expense projections for the year across the board. If you have multiple years of operating statements, determine your trend line and increase that. Then adjust your plan according to your SMART goals, complemented by income and expenses. What does that SMART goal actually bring to the party, and what does it cost you? You can add those to the total and then actually even go back by month and say, if most of the activity is going to happen at the second half of the year, the first half of the year is going to be a little less in terms of increase, and the back half of the year will be much higher in terms of increase, both in income and expenses, or vice versa. Most of your expenses will occur in the first half of the year, but most of the income will occur in the second half of the year, and the expenses may actually go down. The other thing you might do is simply use somebody else's budget. And as long as it's not copyrighted, it's perfectly okay to steal somebody else's budget. And really, all you're looking for are benchmarks. What are similar organizations spending on people, programs, brick and mortar, etc.? And let me digress here for just a minute and give you another really valuable tool for a decision maker, and that is the miracle of managing by percent and not dollars. It might be helpful here just to quickly review what percent means. Per is just one of each of, and cent or centum comes from the Latin word meaning out of 100. The advantage of the percent tool is that first, the dollars that someone else is spending should probably mean little to you. They can be much larger or much smaller. What you really want to know is what proportion or percentage of their scarce and precious resources are they spending on a particular important category. And let's face it, we learn much by comparing ourselves. A good dynamic budget establishes benchmarks and percentages, and they are the tool that you use to establish your own benchmarks. How do you measure similar but different organizations? Dollars don't mean much. It's the percent that makes the difference and tells you what you really need to know. Percent is the great leveler. What percent are they spending on key areas of interest? Allow me to share with you an example of a dynamic budget. And first, I'm going to hand out a budget with detail. And if you're listening to this and you don't have a chance to see this budget, it is simply one sheet of paper with lots of little bitty numbers, multiple columns. And how do you feel when you get that? And if you're like me, what happens is that you look at that sheet of paper and you're going, oh my gosh, there are so many numbers in here, and you just simply click your switch and it's just not interesting. I'm going to have somebody walk through this detail by detail, and my guess is if you're like me, it's going to take so much time that you're really not that interested at all. But instead, if I hand out the exact same budget, but all of the categories are collapsed, and I explain to you that the first column is year to date, the second column is what we'd like to have happen, and the third column is whether we're in or out of the budget that we decided. You can look at all of these and say, I think I might be able to understand that, and they tell a story about where the organization is going. The lesson here is that simple is best. Always start with the big picture and then move down into the weeds. 99.9% of the people that you're going to be working with who are looking at this budget will be dumbfounded by the detail of the previous budget that I handed out. If you hand out this particular budget, they can work through this, and then you can actually expand each of these categories, if you want to, into not only subcategories, but also do it by month. Step 4 is simply saying, okay, now that I have this budget, as we go forward, we are going to measure every month. We are going to calculate or present our financial statements and compare them to the budget. And then we're going to adjust, and that is simply dynamic budgeting. What are the benefits of putting a budget together? Well, first thing is you're building a solid foundation for financial stewardship. You are going to get what you want. You may not get what you think you want, but you're going to get the things that you really need. You are sharing some of the really significant rules of the game with your team or stakeholders. They are not driving in the fog. They are driving on a clear road. They know what is likely to happen. You're also helping your team members understand and get excited about what the future holds. And finally, you're putting in place a critical tool that will significantly improve the possibility of achieving what you want. Let's review quickly. Budgets are hard work. They're the road less traveled. Budgets are an important tool to get you what you want, and they require discipline to bridge the gap between what we have and what we want. Budgets are strategic rules that, when followed, lead to a predetermined end, and budgets are guardrails to keep you on track to reaching your goals. Success is determined by how well you allocate scarce and precious resources for the highest and best use in making your mission happen. And finally, 4 steps to get an effective budget. First, get a vision. 2, set SMART goals with your budgets and pro formas attached. 3, be a good student. 4, measure and adjust, i.e., dynamic budgeting. Let's go back to the goals. The first goal was to share the secret to making the future happen, and the second one was to give you the dynamic budgeting tool that you can use to help your organization grow your passion. How did we do? Thank you for listening and participating in this seminar, this little workshop.